Conference matchups continue to get more competitive this week, and we'll give you the full breakdown right here on FCS All In. Thanks so much for tuning in to our Week 5 episode, everyone. I'm your host, Alex Eshelman. Coming up, Sam Herder, he's back from Ireland, teams up with Craig Haley to preview upcoming games. We also talk about our game of the week, that is the State Fair Classic, of course, and you'll hear from guest picker, that is HBCU All-Star Jay Walker. So suit up, it's time for the show. Joining me this week, every week, it is Senior FCS Analyst of Hero Sports, that is Sam Herder, and Senior FCS Editor of Stats Perform and theanalyst.com, Craig Haley. Guys, let's get right into it. Our Game Ball segment, starting with our go-to player. Craig, I'll start with you. Which player across the FCS landscape would you give your Game Ball to from week 4?
There were plenty, Alex. I think everybody always likes to know who's the next best thing, and can certainly say MJ Flowers of Eastern Illinois, running back, just took over that game against McNeese. 37 carries, 272 yards, and a touchdown, and they rallied back to win on a late field goal. I'd say MJ Flowers, the running back at Eastern Illinois.
Yeah, Sam Franklin from UT Martin is having a phenomenal start to the season, and UT Martin overall is having a really good start to their season as well. And only through 4 games, and Sam Franklin is almost getting to the 1,000-yard rushing mark, which if you do that in one season as a whole, you're doing pretty good. And so he's having monster numbers, and had another monster game this last weekend.
Incredible performance by him. Moving on, team of the week. Craig, who would you give your game ball to, a team within the FCS?
Great question. I do always like kind of a theme and maybe a group of teams. There have been 8 teams that were a conference champion last year that lost in their conference opener, and 5 times it happened this past weekend. Idaho, Delaware, Cornell, Houston Christian, Sacred Heart, they all beat a defending champion in their conference in the conference opener for that defending champ. I just think that was a tremendous storyline, and a lot of it took place here in week 4.
Montana State, there's 2 top 10 showdowns last weekend within the Big Sky, and Montana State going to number 10 Weber State was one of the better matchups of the weekend. And I think a lot of people predicted Montana State to win that game, but definitely not predicting them to win 40-0. Just a phenomenal showing by the Bobcats, both offensively and defensively, and they just continue to show they are a legit title contender this year.
Last but not least, if you could give a game ball to a state fair food, and I'll explain why we have this question in just a second, which food would it be? Craig, you go first.
Well, this summer I was on a tour of baseball parks and always had a hot dog. So that's an easy one. I'm going to go chocolate soft serve ice cream. I'm a sucker for that.
I love it. Mine's pretty basic too, Craig. I go with a classic cotton candy. You can never go wrong with cotton candy, in my opinion. Sam, what do you think? What's your go-to fair food?
Yeah, I think you can call it, a lot of different things, but I think like the supreme potato nachos, where you have, the potato rounds with meat on top of it, and then you have nacho cheese and some tomatoes, lettuce. That's usually my go-to, where if I'm at the fair, I'm trying to find a stand that has that.
I love it. Well, all the fans watching, if you're going to the State Fair Classic, keep in mind of our 3 go-to foods and tag us on social media. The State Fair Classic is our game of the week, and we will break it all down. It's Grambling State versus Prairie View A&M coming up. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to the SWAC on FCS All In. I'm Kalon Hooks. As we creep upon the midway mark of college football, Week 5 is here in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a good one, and you're going to be in for a treat. The top 2 teams in the SWAC was Prairie View A&M ranked number 1 and Grambling State ranked number 2. Will meet in Dallas, Texas to battle it out for the top spot in the SWAC West Division at the annual State Fair Classic. Both teams are undefeated in SWAC play. And coming off a clutch 46-yard game-winning kick against Alcorn State in overtime to secure the victory 37-34, Prairie View A&M kicker Guillermo Rodriguez was named SWAC Specialty Player of the Week. Immediately following the ASU win, Prairie View A&M head coach Bubba McDowell identified early on that the Grambling State offense has been utilizing the passing game to where Grambling State quarterback Miles Crawley stands third in the SWAC in passing yards. Prairie View has only allowed 125 rushing yards against SWAC opponents, but Coach McDowell says as long as they take care of the back end, they'll be just fine against Grambling State.
Again, we're just going to go and play football the way we been playing, Doc. I mean, we've been playing good run football, and now we got to take care of that back end. If we can take care of that back end, we're going to be pretty darn good as a whole defensively. The run we've done it from day one. I mean, the CSU, ACU, SMU, we stopped them as well at certain times. So we just got to get that backfield correct, and believe me, we will.
As for Grambling State, they're coming off a 35-23 victory over Texas Southern after collecting 282 rushing yards led by Chance Williams' 176 yards on 17 carries, along with Crawley's 195 passing yards for 2 touchdowns. This trial is a two-headed monster for the Grambling State offense and a threat that the Prairie View A&M defense must find a solution for if they plan to stay undefeated this weekend and at the top of the SWAC West Division. Hear from assistant head coach John Simon on the Grambling State game plan this weekend against Prairie View A&M.
We identified some things that we thought that we can do well in the running game, and our offensive line did a great job of executing that thing. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but gave our running back some room to make some plays, and they took advantage of those opportunities. So we're excited about the talent that we have in that backfield and the way that those guys are playing right now and taking care of the ball.
Both teams first met at the State Fair Classic in 1985, where Grambling State was victorious 27-7. Grambling State leads the series, but Prairie View A&M has won the last 5 contests, including last year's contest, 34-14. Reporting for the SWAC on FCS All In, I'm Kalon Hooks.
It is our Game of the Week segment, Grambling State versus Prairie View A&M, a neutral site matchup, the State Fair Classic. All right, Sam, let's start with you. Prairie View A&M, they've won the last 5 straight matchups against the Tigers. What makes you think that they can do it for the 6th time?
Having the experience, in this game and knowing what to expect. I mean, last year the crowd for this game at the Cotton Bowl nearly hit 54,000 people there, and so it's just a phenomenal atmosphere. You don't usually see that type of crowd at the FCS level, and so just having that experience of playing there, just having the number of Grambling, I think that could potentially carry over. You want to see more offensive explosiveness from Prairie View A&M. I think that's maybe what's been holding them back so far this year, and they struggled to get points on the board, and they were going up against a Grambling defense that has some really good individual talent. So just I'm not saying ditch the whole playbook, but potentially try something new that has that things haven't been working so far, and try something new and maybe show something on film that Grambling hasn't seen just yet.
Craig, their defense, Prairie View A&M's defense has been struggling a bit this last season, giving up on average 42 points a game. And they're going up against Grambling State's dynamic offense, very explosive, both in the ground game and in the air as well. How will they be able to overcome what Grambling is putting out offensively?
Well, Grambling is a whole different team this year. I mean, they've struggled in recent years. They have a new quarterback transfer, Miles Crawley, just really, setting a great lead here behind center. And I think Prairie View needs to get a little pressure on him. They only have 1 sack to open the season, 4 games. That doesn't seem like a Panthers kind of defense to me. I mean, they really need to get to him and put a little pressure on Miles Crawley and change the game, because Prairie View can really run the ball. They definitely have a deep rushing attack. Even that's not up to speed this year, but if they can control the ball and put pressure on Grambling's quarterback, I think the real Grambling or the real Prairie View comes out if they can do that.
One key factor for each team in order to advance from 500, both teams at 2-2 so far this year. How are they going to get above that 500 mark? Sam, let's start with you.
Prairie View A&M's offense really struggling to get going, and if they do get going this game, they're going to have to neutralize Sunday Anderson, who's a phenomenal defensive end for Grambling. He's a potential NFL draft prospect, really good defensive end for Grambling, and you can't let him wreak havoc on your offense because it's especially at the defensive end position. If he's just disrupting everything, it's hard to get anything going, whether it's in the running game or the passing game. And then for Grambling, I think the key is for Miles Crowley to just keep on being efficient. Craig mentioned Crowley already, but I mean 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's close to 1,000 yards passing already. He's been a great addition for Grambling, and so him just continually to do his thing. Don't no turnovers. Just continue to be efficient. Make the plays that are asked of you, and just not have the atmosphere as well kind of get to you.
Craig, your thoughts?
We kind of talked about a little bit with Idaho last week. You kind of have to meet the moment. And I think that's the key for Grambling State, because you really haven't been here under Hugh Jackson yet in this moment of they win this game, they're right there in the SWAC West Division race. And it's such a tradition-rich program. You want to see them on this level. I think, that's what they have to do is meet the moment. Prairie View has to go back to what has gotten them, to be a winning program year in and year out in the SWAC, which they have done. Bubba McDowell's probably got something up his sleeve this week because they really haven't played up to their best. Maybe they were kind of hanging in the weeds a little bit and raring to go here. So I just think it's a great game. The crowd's going to be outstanding. Just, these classic games are just, the atmosphere is just off the charts.
I know you guys are making me want to go to this game in person. I have never been to the State Fair Classic, and I need to check it off my bucket list. We'll continue to break this game down as well as a handful in our Pick'em segment coming up here on FCS All In.
Building champions for life didn't just happen overnight. Since 1920, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, SWAC, has been in the forefront in leadership and excellence in all our athletic programs. There are very few major sports halls of fame that a SWAC athlete is not a member. Hall of Fame coaches who were stewards and mentors to these elite athletes. Our tradition, our distinction, our legacy. We are the SWAC, building champions for life.
Back with more FCS All In here for our Week 5 episode. Alex Eshelman, Sam Herder, Craig Haley. It is time for our Pick'em segment. Sam, let's start with you. Harvard versus Holy Cross. Who you got?
Holy Cross keeps it rolling here. I really like these cross conference games, especially now that Holy Cross has risen to be a top tier FCS team. You can kind of get a better gauge of how good these Ivy League teams are. But Holy Cross is just they're so explosive offensively and defensively. They're sound, and so I like Holy Cross to keep it going.
Yay on that. I know you're very fond of Chattanooga. I'm very fond of the Worcester Woo Sox, and this game is being played in their ballpark, Polar Park in Worcester, Mass. A neutral kind of site. I just think Holy Cross is on a roll. Their last regular season loss to an FCS opponent was against Harvard 2 years ago. So I think that still motivates them, even though they came back and beat Harvard last year. I don't think they've forgotten 19 in a row against FCS regular season opponents.
The Worcester Woo Sox. Try to say that 5 times fast. All right, moving on. San Diego versus Davidson. Sam, who do you think wins it?
Pioneer Football League matchup, and I think the top team in the Pioneer right now, is St. Thomas, but they are ineligible for the postseason, and so I think that auto bid is likely going to come down between San Diego and Davidson. USD has kind of run the league throughout the 2010s, but Davidson has kind of flipped the script now, and they've made the last few postseason games. I still like Davidson. Their ball control type offense, I think is really tough to stop, especially when they get 5 yards, 7 yards a chunk on the ground, and I think they continue to do that to get the win.
I think San Diego's been the better team this year. They're plus 11 turnover margin. Davidson at home, I think they're finding themselves after a rough start. Coulter Cleveland's been tremendous as a new quarterback. I'm going to go Davidson, even though I think San Diego's been the better team so far.
Battle of the Dakotas. We've got South Dakota versus North Dakota State. Who do you think, Sam?
It's tough to see the other USD, going into the Fargo Dome and getting a win. The Bison are just looking really sharp offensively and defensively. And, South Dakota, I think, is better than what they showed at the end of last year where they really struggled. But, it's still just not quite there yet to knock off the Bison in the Fargo Dome.
The Bison get it done. Craig, what do you think?
The Bison are just so good coming off a bye week, the way they prepare. They may not be able to beat South Dakota State off a bye week, but they can beat South Dakota.
North Dakota State, gotta love it. They are the blue blood, top tier of the FCS. Moving on, William and Mary versus Elon.
William and Mary here to get a road win. Elon will offer a challenge, but William and Mary, a great gauge for them. Really playing, really strong defensively. The Tri-Bar offensively, they have so many guys coming back from last year and so much talent on that offense. I want to see a bit more offensively from William and Mary. They are a ground you out, run first type of team, and so they're not going to put up gaudy numbers and points per game, but I still want to see a little bit more from William and Mary offensively, but I do think they get the road win here.
Craig, what do you think?
I like the Tribe too. I mean, their one loss last year was to Elon, so I think that's another motivating factor. It's not a very rough schedule for William and Mary this year, but Elon and the next one, Virginia, I think they're circled on the calendar for the Tribe, and this is one they got to get.
The other battle of the Dakotas, that's North Dakota going up against South Dakota State. What do you think, Sam?
South Dakota State here, but I do think this is going to be a tight ball game. Really the last 4 or so meetings between these two have really been great ball games. And, actually the last time South Dakota State starting quarterback Mark Granowski has lost to an FCS team as a full game starter was at UND going all the way back to the spring season. And so, I don't know if that's in the back of his mind or anything like that, because that's several seasons ago. But I think South Dakota State knows that UND is a playoff contender, and this is a great test for the Jacks. It's going to be another sold out crowd for SDSU, so it's hard to pick against South Dakota State right now.
Craig, do the Jackrabbits get the win?
I'd say so, Alex. I mean, Sam mentions Mark Granowski. I mean, Tommy Schuster, just so efficient as well. So that's a great quarterback matchup. I did come across something this week. I was looking at a little research here. Tremendous stat. South Dakota State, going back their last 14 games, 57 trips into an opponent's red zone, 57 times they've converted. 44 touchdowns, 13 field goals, 57 in a row going into this week.
You guys, this was the highlight of the Pick'em segment. That was another really good statistic. All right, Villanova versus Albany. Sam, who gets the dub?
Villanova here, although this is, kind of one of those CAA games where you kind of want to pick, the quote unquote upset here, just because the CAA, they do knock each other off so much. But Albany is much improved compared to last year. I just really like how Villanova is playing right now. Really came onto my radar this last weekend with a big time win. And Nova was right on the playoff bubble last year at 6-5. I think they're 1 year better, and they get a big road win here.
I've been on the Villanova bandwagon because I had them in my projected playoff field going into the year. Something I'm not used to doing is switching. I'm switching, going UAlbany. They can stop the run, which is Villanova's forte, and they're coming off a bye week. I'm going to go the Great Danes at home.
All right, we'll see how it ends up. Next up, Idaho versus Eastern Washington. This one intrigues me, being that Eastern had a great performance against UC Davis. Sam, who gets the win here?
Another top 25 matchup in the Big Sky. I really like what Eastern Washington is doing, turning around from a tough end to last season. In Idaho, coming off of a very physical and emotional win over Sac State, now having to go on the road to the red turf, which is a tough place to play. I still like Idaho here, even though it's going to be a closer game than maybe what I anticipated, a few weeks ago. But the Vandals are just rolling right now. Offensively, is just really explosive, but defensively, I think is really the difference maker for the Vandals. Making them go from a good team last year to a really good team this year is thanks to their defense.
I'm going to go with Idaho's depth getting it done here because it is a tough one to go on the red turf. They're 0-3 there since they returned to the Big Sky in 2018. I just think they get it done, even though Eastern Washington will put up a fight.
Last but not least, our game of the week, State Fair Classic, Grambling State versus Prairie View A&M at a neutral site. Sam, who gets the win here?
I lean Grambling to get it done here, and this is a huge game in the SWAC West. It seems like the SWAC West division is going to come down to Grambling, Prairie View A&M, or Southern. It seems like those are the top 3 teams, and all are undefeated right now. Granted, it's early in the season, so has huge implications for deep down the season. I just, Prairie View A&M is just not showing me enough offensively. Grambling's defense hasn't been, phenomenal this year, but I just really like some of the players. I mentioned Sundianta. Anderson is a great player, and Lewis Matthews is a really good linebacker as well for Grambling. So I think Grambling gets it done this year.
Prairie View, 10 years in a row, they've had a winning conference record. They're 2-0 here in conference already, even though they're not even playing that well. They've won twice with walk-off field goals this year. I think Prairie View gets it done in a great game, maybe with a walk-off field goal.
I love it, you guys. I'm excited to see how this one pans out and how we can see which one of you is right this time next week. Thank you both so much, as always, for your input, and we'll be right back with more on FCS All In. The great Craig Haley once said, it doesn't get any bigger in the HBCU broadcasting world than Jay Walker. So we are very excited here on FCS All In today because he is with us for our celebrity guest picker segment. It's ESPN analyst and Howard football all-time great, Jay Walker. Jay, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. How you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Craig, and thank you for all the work that you all do on a weekly basis, giving some great teams some exposure.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Now, tell me some of your fondest memories, life lessons, everything in between that you took from your time at Howard into the pro football world, the pro baseball world, and now in the broadcast booth.
I think when I went to Howard, we had that chip on the shoulder, we were jealous. We had guys from our high school teams that might have gone to bigger schools, bigger places, and, had their names on the back of their jerseys. Had uniform combinations, things like that. And you're like, whoa, I'm better than them. And then you always carry that grudge to get you better. So I think that's kind of been my whole thing in life. Like, you can underestimate me, but I don't think you're better than me. And because I came from FCS football, I remember going to the NFL Combine and my coach, Steve Wilson, telling me, hey, you've seen it now. You've seen the film. You're good or better than all these guys that you've read about. And once you get the opportunity, you just make the most of it.
On that note, Jay, what would your biggest piece of advice for student athletes at the FCS level right now on how to excel, not only in pro football, everything past, if you want to continue athletically, but just in life too? Like I said, you're a huge ESPN announcer now.
I would say, play through adversity. I think the scary thing right now is you start to believe the hype a little bit. If you can be a big fish in a small pond, there's no problem with that, because the ultimate goal is to be a bigger fish in the biggest pond out there, which would be the National Football League, or it would be Wall Street, or it would be ESPN. But if you don't know how to play through adversity in the classroom, how to just dig down deep and compete, then you're going to be in for a world of trouble when things don't go your way. And trust me, things aren't going to go your way. And I think that's what we're seeing now. A lot of kids are just transferring, moving from FBS down to FCS, and the FCS coaches are like, these guys have no heart. So I think FCS teach you to have heart. They give you the platform that you need, and it can really take you a long way in life.
I do know that there's a handful of student athletes out there that want to pursue broadcast. What's your biggest piece of advice to aspiring broadcasters out there?
Study, and preparation is the key. And I think when you get good at this job, you make it look easy, but I put a lot of work into it. That's one of the things I take pride in, is when people say, oh man, you make that thing look so easy. I'm like, that's a compliment, but don't think it's easy enough. You can just do it and walk on the stage and do what I do. We work very hard at what we do. And I'll never forget my very first time doing a game. I was a sideline reporter, and I was awful. Didn't study at all. And when I didn't study, it showed. I thought I did a good job. And fortunately, somebody said, you can do this. You just need some work. And then I studied. And then a year later, I did the same game. And they said, wow, I can't believe you've gotten so much better from week one to a year later, where I think you actually can make a living doing this.
Thank you for that, Jay. I very much appreciate it. And
I was awful.
I don't believe that for one second. Well, I'll tell you what, I think everybody's been there at one point. I can definitely say the same. I've had multiple moments where I just go, what am I doing? Or what did I just say? So thank you for that piece of advice. And to continue seeing his great work, Black College Live, that's his podcast every week with co-host Tiffany Green. It airs every Saturday morning on YouTube. So be sure to check it out, everybody who's watching. All right, let's get to our pick'em segment. First and
Okay.
foremost, Howard versus Holy Cross. Who you got, Jay?
Harvard versus Holy Cross. So I'm going to say,
I'm sorry. You're right. I had Howard on the mind. It is Harvard versus Holy Cross. Thanks.
Yes, that's all right. Initially, I was thinking, Harvard's on the upswing. They made it to the top 25, but those wins just don't mean enough, to beat them. I think they're not intimidated to go to Holy Cross, but Holy Cross is having a good year. Everybody knows what they're capable of doing. It's as Boston College, so I'm going with the Crusaders, Holy Cross.
All right. Next up, San Diego versus Davidson.
Pick'em game for me right here. San Diego, I don't know if they're the team that they've been that has owned that conference for the past, 10, 12 years. I think the road trip across the country is going to affect them in this game where it normally doesn't. Davidson offense is hot, so I'm going with Davidson.
All right. The land of Steph Curry, obviously different sport there, but that is the reigning Hall of Famer, one of many from there. Moving on, South Dakota versus North Dakota State.
Oh, I thought it was South Dakota State versus North Dakota State. Oh, that makes it easy. I'm going with the Bison. It's North Dakota State.
I know it's easy to get them all mixed up because to your point, North Dakota is at South Dakota State this week. Who you got?
Absolutely. And with that being the case, I'm going with the defending champs. I mean, South Dakota State, they're rolling right now. The coach, I do want to see what's going to happen with, first-year coach when he faces the game of adversity. I don't think this is it. So I think South Dakota State will win this one.
All right, moving on from the Dakotas, William and Mary versus Elon. Who you got, Jay?
I'm a big fan of Mike London and the job that he's doing there at William and Mary. So I think they can travel. They've got a rushing attack, and rushing attacks really help when you're going on the road. Even though I think the Phoenix of Elon are a good squad, but I'm going with William and Mary.
All right, next up, Villanova at Albany.
What can I say? My dark horse team to make a run is Villanova. So I got to stick with them here going on the road. I think they're really good. They've got one of the best defenses out there. So I'm going with Nova for a long way this football season.
All right, Nova, let's see what you got this weekend. Moving on, Idaho at Eastern Washington. Really excited to see if Eastern Washington can upset the Vandals, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's good to see Eastern Washington showing some signs of life again. I think they're one of those programs where it's good for FCS football when the Inferno's on fire and they've got the red turf going and they're throwing the ball like crazy. But this is too big a chunk for them to bite off. I think Idaho, one of the best teams in the country. So I'm going to go with the Vandals.
All right, let's see if the Vandals can keep it going. Grambling State versus Prairie View A&M. It's our game of the week, the State Fair Classic. Who gets the win, Jay?
Wow, neutral site game down in Dallas, and Grambling owned that series as of late. It's the wacky West, I call it, the wacky Wild West in the SWAC. I mean, you can throw a dartboard of who's going to win the conference. It's a divisional game. It means a lot. Bubba McDowell, the head coach for Prairie View A&M. You got Hugh Jackson, who's showing signs of life at Grambling. It's really a pick'em game, and normally I'd say, you know what, the better team's going to win this game, but I just think because the West is so wild, I'm going with the G-Men of Grambling State University. I think Hugh Jackson's going to get his first big signature win as head coach of the Tigers.
Ending that 5-game winning streak for Prairie View A&M, according to Jay. All right. Thank you so much, Jay. Before I let you go, I asked this question to Craig and Sam earlier in the show. We have a game ball segment. So we say, okay, who would you give your game ball to here in this category? Since it is the State Fair Classic, your go-to State Fair food. If you could give a game ball to a State Fair food, what is it?
Ooh, that's an easy one, to be honest. It's the turkey legs. The smoked turkey legs they've got down there are unbelievable. The way they do those in Texas, and at this game in particular, I mean, they look like baseball bats. They're good too. So you got fried Oreos. That would be my second little unique thing. But I'm going with the turkey legs all day, jalapeno flavor.
You have a way more exciting answer than me. I just said a classic cotton candy, but go with Jay's.
No,
Everybody
candy.
is watching. I
How
know.
old are you, Alex? How old are we?
I'm 5. I'm 5. I'm going with 5. I still like my classic cotton candy. All right, Jay. Thank you so much. And again, everyone who's watching, be sure to check out his podcast, Black College Live. Airs every Saturday morning on YouTube. Thank you, Jay. We appreciate it.
That's what's up. Thank you.
All right, guys, I asked Sam, Craig, and Jay their go-to fair food. I want to know yours too. So tag me on social media at Alex Eshelman. Are you with me on the cotton candy? Are you not? I got to know. Thanks so much for tuning in as always, and we'll see you next Friday.